Bonjour à tous, je suis très excitée de vous présenter ma première interview d'un Amérindien de la nation Lakota, je devrais dire Lakota, qui vit dans le Dakota du Sud. Il s'agit de Lewis GrassRope. Il s'est gentiment prêté au jeu et voilà, je suis très excitée de vous partager cette interview. Alors, que dit-il en résumé? Eh bien, si j'avais vraiment une phrase à retenir, ce serait il propose et il aimerait qu'on se rappelle d'être qui nous sommes vraiment. Et voilà, simplement ça. Il nous explique aussi que eh bien, les nations amérindiennes aujourd'hui se battent encore, hélas, pour les mêmes raisons et contre le racisme, et que leurs valeurs sont toujours la persévérance, la liberté, l'entraide. Je pense que ce sont des valeurs nobles. Et il nous explique aussi qu'il prend soin avec son fils, de lui inculquer toutes les valeurs, toutes les traditions qui sont les leurs. Et il chapeaute aussi un groupe d'hommes pour leur réapprendre ce qu'est un vrai homme amérindien, qui respecte les femmes, où dans leur culture, chacun a sa place, que ce soit les enfants, les plus âgés, les hommes, les femmes. Alors je vous laisse découvrir cette interview et j'espère qu'elle vous plaira. Voilà, je vous dis à bientôt, au revoir.
Yeah. So, hi, Louis. I'm very happy that you accepted my invitation today. So, my name is Sandra. I really want to share your culture, your knowledge to European people, especially French. And so, I'm very glad that you are accepting to teach us some of your knowledge. So. I'm learning Lakota language, so I just can say Ha Shicheshi, Sandra Emachiape. That's all I can say.
Okay.
So please just introduce you.
Matakiapi, we chakpi kasapa, machiapalo. I come from the Komashichangu Lakota, the Kui Chasha Oshpai, or the Peji Wakanti Oshpe, Maate, Justin Peji Wakan, my Lala Garfield Peji Wakan, other Lala is Joseph Peji Wakan, leads up to the first Peji Wakan. So, what I said was, hello, relatives here. My name is White Star from the Lower Brew, from the Lower Brew Sioux tribe. I didn't say Lower Brew, but in this Kuichasha tribe. Oyate, and I'm part Chichangu. I'm from the Lakota Nation. I'm from one of the many bands that formed the Ocheti Shakawi. I am, just grateful to be here and talk with you all and share a little bit of knowledge that I know. I'm not wisdom keeper or anything of that sort. I just know everything that I can try to teach at the same time. So.
Okay.
But my English name is Lewis. My last name is GrassRope, which is Pejiwakan. So that's where I come from. I come from the first Pejiwakan. That's my grandfather, my great grandfather.
So you're really, your native name said in English is GrassRope, right?
The Pejiwakan. Pejiwakan is GrassRope.
Okay, all right.
Wichakpi Kasapa is Wise Star, and that's my name.
Wise Star. Wow, what a beautiful name.
Thank you.
So where do you live now?
I live in Lower Brew, South Dakota. I'm just out on holidays down at my relatives down in Cali here, California.
All right.
Out visiting. Trying to make the best out of these times, especially in the time that.
Okay, great. And so your relatives lives in California. Do you have other relatives living somewhere else?
No, all my relatives, all my Teospe lives in Lower Brew. They live in South Dakota. This is my wife's family. She's from the Agua Caliente, the Andacuya Indians, and that's where I'm at right now, down in her reservation, visiting her family.
Okay. And how is it for a native to live in South Dakota? I mean, today.
How is what?
How is it to
Oh,
live in South Dakota today as a native?
As a native, it's still facing the same, many division obstacles, the stuff that we've always faced during the time of the first encroachment. Still facing our identity is still not actually fulfilled. I mean, we're not considered real people at times, according to U.S. government at times. And so we still face a lot of problems within each reservation. Each reservation is trying to make the best of what we can. That's why you always see a good native always having humor, laughing around, or we try to find the best of what we can. But in the end, we face every problem that faces the world right now. We got the global pandemic going on. We also have, the racism, the many atrocious acts against our land bases, destroying our wildlife. I mean, it's still the same stuff that has happened since we're still fighting for it.
Okay.
And we're still trying to fight for the same thing, is to try to save with what we can live with. So there's a lot to it. I mean, I think with everything that's going on, it's I really can't say we're unique. We're not. We are Lakota people, and for us, we're always tied to our lands, and our lands is what we always go back to. And we listen to our teachings and to our origin histories, our history, teaching, oral history, everything we look at, we take that to, that's what keeps us here. Most of the time, that's the only thing that we have left in this world that reminds us of who we really are.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the whole purpose. And I was glad that you reached out and talked with me, but in the end, we want our identity to be known. It's just not Lakota, it's every nation out there that's native that wants to know, because in the end, we're held, people like to laugh and think lowly of us at times because of but we're still here. We still have perseverance. We're still showing the values that keep us guys sane and keep us guys going, because in the end, we really truly love our people. We really truly love the buffaloes that are sitting behind me. That's to our origins. Those are the things that keep us going. So there's a lot to actually say. There's much more that could be taught and talked about in the end. But living in South Dakota, probably cold right now. I mean, I'm glad I'm here. When I left, it was still kind of a little warm, but now I think my mom and them said that they're snowing back there. So
Oh wow.
I'm missing it.
You miss snow?
Yeah, I love snow.
Me too.
Hunting season.
So, what are the values of the Lakota people?
It's the same as most everything else. Is we always pray for it's the value system that exists is like courage, respect, honor, humility, compassion. There's wisdom. There's more to it, but that's all I can think of right now. I got a headache.
Great
So
values.
forgive me on it.
And
But there's more to it. I mean, like I said, there's no, I don't mean to cut you off, but in the end, it's like there's a lot to it, and a lot of it comes down to like following the lifestyle that our old way of life that actually brings us back to the beginning. brings us back to the center. And that's what helps us at times, you know. And I'm not against Western, the Bible, or anything of those natures. You know, that's you know, it's a different way for it's practiced different. But for us, it's always about the Chinupa and what our origins brought us back to. And that's what is happening with any ethnicity right now. Is not they forgot their origins, their oral history that brings them back to that center. Now we're all trying to be. I'll put it in one saying: is you got some natives want to be black, you got some blacks want to be natives, you got white people want to be Lakota, you got all these ethnicities trying to be different people. But in reality, we weren't. We're supposed to be who we really are. And that goes back to the oral histories that we come from, you know. And I'm not saying that that's bad or, you know, to not get anybody in an uproar and making them feel different. What I'm sitting there saying is that deep within yourself, in your own genes, in your own DNA, there's a place in there that goes back to that origin that will bring you back to that center. But it has to be up to that person to find it. For me, it's for going back to this old way of life, back to the Dakota way of life, so that I can be centered, so I could be part of what is truly there. You know, the true connections to the universe and to all that is. When we say "mitakuye oyase," we say we're all related. That just doesn't mean human being. That means we're related to everything. You know, and people get that concept kind of mixed up. But when we say we're actually related, we're related to it. We're supposed to be caretakers, stewards, however people voice it. But in the end, a lot of us have forgotten those roles. So when I say come back to that center, that's what that center is.
Okay.
Is figuring out and reminding ourselves where we're supposed to be.
What do you
I'm
do?
sorry, I kind of got to.
Sorry. What do you do to keep your roots, to keep your traditions alive? Do you do something? Do you teach to children? What do you do?
For me right now, just teaching my sons how to be part of the ceremonies that will teach them to be men.
Mm-hmm.
And bring them back to the Sundance circles or to Sweat Lodge, practicing old ways that are missing within each tribe. There's nothing wrong with this. Some people, everybody has a right to choice. It's a power of choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and I want my kids to have the choice of knowing who they really are before they actually make their choice to do what they choose to. You know, because one day that's what's going to help them once they find themselves lost in translation or lost in a different path. That will find them back to and they'll remember where to be, where to go, and it will bring them back to the center. So what I do is right now, just over this past year, has just been teaching my sons how to hunt, harvest, protect, be protectors and be providers for the family, and teaching them how to make meat, doing everything that we can, trying to do it the best way we can in this most modernized way. So that's what I've been working on. But there's a lot more other stuff that we, when I say we, it's my family and all the circles that we're a part of that they're teaching. You know, I sit, and I'm just like you. I go and sit in those circles, and I'm still a baby, still learning, just like anybody else. No one could tell you, oh, I know everything, because they're wrong. Everybody learns, and that's the whole part of humility, is learning it, the constant ability to learn, because we don't know it. True. The only thing we know is we could sit down and listen to the 3-year-old kid that will walk over and say 2 words to you and put you in your place, and you're sitting there forever looking for an answer. You're trying to mind boggle, tearing apart your head, and the kid comes over and says 2 words. There's your answer. You know, those are the things that we miss as people, and that's kind of basically where I'm trying to get to teach my sons, is that they just need to don't make things complicated. Think, look at the relatives, the grass, everything that's around us. They live too, and they go through a lot more than what we do. In truth, so they do. They sit out in the elements while we get to sit comfortably in a nice home.
It's true. So how do you connect with nature? Do you go outside? What do you do?
Oh, I do my own lodges, run my own sweats for people now and then, but it's, the way I connect is basically out in nature. That's why I like to hunt. It's not to go out and it is to harvest, but it's also there to put you in touch back with nature, because nature teaches you a lot. They're the reminders, just like the baby is, of what we're supposed to be. And that's where we need to be at times. For me, that's just, in my opinion, just some of the ways that how I get back to my origins. When it's something that I've always reminded myself of as a kid. I loved being in the hills. I loved playing out in nature all the time when I was a kid. When I go back out there nowadays, it puts me back into that reminder of where I once was. Because we get so lost. That's why I said, in any ethnicity, if you don't understand your origins or understand where you come from, remember that part, where you was as a kid, what you planned to be, what you wanted to be, because you lived free. Now we feel we're older and we don't know. We get lost in that translation, like, oh, I'm going to think about all these new ways. But again, that simplistic thing of going back to them to remind yourself of your humble beginning, not your lift to fame or anything. For us as Lakota, it's not about being up on the hierarchy. It's never about that. For us, it's always about being below the people, to make sure the people survive, not up here, down here, where the people are above you, because it's them that survive, not you, not the person that you're trying to be. Because you see what's wrong with the world today. Everybody wants to jump the chain to be the big man, presidente, or however, whatever they want to be. But in the end, if you're not keeping yourself humble to those beginnings, what's the point? You lose yourself. You lose your people. And that's the part that always reminded of as a Lakota, is that it's never about oneself. It's about everyone as a whole.
True.
No, that's a teaching.
Yeah, it is. Do you think it's feasible for you guys to be able to live with the modern life and keeping your roots, your traditions, your celebrations? Do you think you can do both?
I think it's still we're evolved. I heard this saying once. Actually, was asked this question when I was in Standing Rock up there with the fighting against all the stuff up there. I had this old man come over because I was using an axe, and I was like, well, what do you think? Would Sitting Bull be using a chainsaw, or would he be using an axe? And I was sitting there thinking, he'd be using an axe because that's what he had. But he sat there and said, no, they innovate and they evolve just like anybody else. He would be using a chainsaw, and which is true. You get more wood out of it. So we do evolve. The traditions have to stay, but you evolve with it. We innovate just as much as anything else. We can't sit there and, a lot of people think that. And that's the miscommunication and the cultural appropriation that is. Like when we talk about being back to those days, doesn't want to, I like to go live in a teepee, but we don't have those deals now. We can't go back living to those days because in truth, any ethnicity that tries to go back to the origins would fail because we don't know how. We don't really know how to live in nature. We go camping. Yeah, we all go camping, but to live out in nature and keep a camp fully functional and living with the dysfunction that is here today in this time, we wouldn't be able to. No one would be able to, because of the understandings that haven't happened. So for me, through just learning through my history, through the history of my people, of the people that the Lakota Nation, in how they upheld everything there is. There is traditions, there were societies, there were things that were there that had a certain role. Okay, they had a role to play in everything, and if those roles weren't met and they don't exist, which they don't exist today, then how are they held? Anybody would be living in that. Did you see that Lord of the Flies? The kids were there all in it. That's what it is, because there's no order. There's no the societies existed for a reason. In all societies, every ethnicity, it doesn't matter which origin, whose origin it is,
Mhm.
they're supposed to have their societies. And if their societies don't exist in this day and age, and they ain't keeping the traditions of those old and still intact, see, that's the problem. Like there's rules or protocols or procedures that societies handle. But nowadays we don't have that. Nowadays we're all pushing it onto in modern day society now is we're pushing it to the police officers. You guys go take care of those, and then they handle it or whatsoever. You guys go take care of that. And then you go push all this other stuff, but no one wants accountability, right? For as a Lakota, that's our accountability is with ours. The choice we make, we live with. We have to live. That goes down to anybody that has to understand that. But those societies will be over there watching. And if they see something, they could come over and tell you and straighten you out. But if you don't, nowadays it's those societies have disappeared. It's everybody's either gatekeeping or scolding. Like, I want to learn about the societies. I'm gonna bring the society back. You don't know nothing. You know nothing of origins. You know nothing of tradition. You can't even speak your native tongue. You're done. You're done. No, you don't bring that back. But in all reality, it's got to come back. And for me as a Lakota, that's what I'm working on, is to bring back the Kichita society and bring back those old protocols that existed so that there is balance.
How
So
will,
Kichita
sorry.
society, the Kichita society is a society that helped maintain order, but they were just one society. There were other societies, the women's society, elderly society. These societies all existed together, hand in hand. There was uh, no higher balances. There was no hierarchy. They were all equal, but they had a specific role to play, and that's what we don't see in our communities. Instead, we have become so how would you say, negative towards each other. We become now easy. We see the jealousy. We take on those values that don't belong to us. Oh, that person's got a new car. Oh, F him. I don't like him because he's got a new car. And then they'll start a feud. And then there's a family feud for ages. But in the end, it should never be that way. It should be, hey, work hand in hand with each other, not to look through those indifferences, not to sit there and fight. But
Sure.
as history teaches us all, if we don't go back to those origins or start looking for that balance within the center falls apart.
Are there any schools to teach natives their origins, their traditions, their culture?
From my understanding, they're initiating some of it into the schools.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of they're starting to bring back our language to the schools, and they're starting to bring some of the our creation stories and stuff to the schools so that our kids have an understanding to who they are. But as far as much else I know, I don't know any other schools or if there's an actual school that just teaches nothing but that. I wish there was. I'd definitely send my kids there, but
Yeah. Maybe you can start one.
well, that's something I'm working towards. I'm working with a collective, not a whole bunch of people that we all sit around and talk about what we should be doing, what needs to be done.
Uh-huh. All right.
So I'll explain a little bit to my role, okay?
Yes, yes, you do.
My role is to teach the men how to be a little bit better men than what we are. You know, for Lakotas, we weren't supposed to be teaching. We weren't supposed to treat our women with disrespect. Nowadays, it's hard to try to teach that in the time and society that we're in because of the world that we live in.
What
The
happened?
world we live in. Huh?
What do you think happened?
Western culture. In all reality, I'll put it in that sense because in the end, it wasn't Western culture. It was the value system that came, and it wasn't about equality anymore. It was about who was going to be the higher, and that's what we learned from Western society was that. And when that became, then you started seeing the how would you say? Because we don't like talking about the stuff that is out there now, but in the end, you see like colonialism that happened with people, the sex rings that existed back when they first came to our land, and the women that were treated that way, and the way that we were beaten down to actually understand to live the Western way. That's what we were taught, that it was okay. It was okay to beat your woman. It was okay to do sexual misdeeds or sexual stuff, all this bad stuff that happened, because that's what we were taught. That's what we saw. Yeah. And with me, a part of a men's society, we talk about these all the time, is how can we create better men so that they could bring that balance and not live through what we see or what's going on. But those are the stuff that we talk to. There's other societies that I work with that are working on the other stuff with women and other issues. So when you look at all the history that exists within Lakota culture, within any Native nation or any nation, if you look at their origin, all the stuff that we face now existed then. It was just had them in different things, like societies. You know, for us, we don't, when we talk about the two-spirit people, you know, there'd be your gay people, or however they want to be labeled, LGBTQ or whatever it is now. But those, they had their own society. And it wasn't like they weren't separated from the people. They had a role just like everybody else. You know, women had their roles, men had their roles, they had their roles. But they all had a role. They all had a role to play. And none of us don't know those roles anymore. Nowadays, we're just all about ourselves in the end. We don't think about nothing more than what is. So, I mean, that's just some of the stuff I'm working on. And I'll be honest with you, what I'm working on, I probably won't see the end of it. I probably won't see the fruit of the seeds of it. Probably be gone in the next one. Yeah. But the ones that I do have planted seeds in and help to mature to and help them become better men, they'll be the ones carrying it. And that's all that's all I care about. That's the selfless acts that most of us want to get to, is trying to help create something better, even if it isn't in my lifetime.
That's great. I read that in your nations there was more matriarchy. That's why it was just well balanced. Is that true?
The argument is always there. So we never had matriarchy. We never had patriarchy. Patriarchy and matriarchs came when Western society came to our land. What we were is more or less an egalitarian or a complementary society. We worked hand in hand with the women. Okay. But the women, if it was their teepee, their teepee. How they do it, maintain it, is their teepee. Men's had their role to go out and go make sure the camp was safe, make sure food was provided. So those are the stuff that we're talking about. But there was no matriarch or patriarch society. there was an egalitarian society where they worked hand in hand. They had the understanding with each other, and they never were separate. They were never divided, as we see these days.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's great. We should go back to this. Even in Europe, I think.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, we take a lot of the teachings because we come from the buffalo. I mean, from our old creation history. Creation story tells us that we come from the buffalo people.
Uh-huh.
If you look at a buffalo, when you kill a buffalo, then this is something that I know. When you kill a buffalo, you see all the buffalo herd around that buffalo. And they're trying to pick it up. They're trying to pick it up to make sure it still keeps living. But it doesn't happen that way. So we got to sit there and realize that that's how far gone our societies are. We don't take care of each other. The only time that we actually come together these days now is either death or, more or less death. The only time we come together for gathering in the end. And if we do come together for family gatherings, what happens? Chaos.
Wow.
Oh, you did this, you did that.
Oh.
You did this to me. You did. I mean, everything that comes out. See, that's that part where you talk about being in the center. You should be able to come together without having that actual dramatization. But when I talk about that, is because we should have already talked through that. That traumatize or whatever those harsh feelings are should have been able to work through it before we actually came through. But today, in the way that we're educated, we continue it. We don't try to resolve the situation. We just like, oh, I hate you. You go on. I don't like you. And then the only standard. I mean, you've probably seen it. I've seen two old grandmas sit there and hate each other for the rest of their almost majority of their life. Every time they saw them, oh, you fucking, oh, excuse my language, but you effing bitch, and just goes off. And then they're only within their presence for about a brief few seconds. And then they'll leave. But I also seen them work together too. So that's the crazy part. Because in the end, the reason why they worked together was because it was for the people. They put apart their indifferences. But nowadays, we can't even do that. Instead, I'm going to go create my own thing so that I feed the people over here, while you feed the people over there. Well, that shouldn't be that. It should be here and be together, and I think that's what is missing within each community and within each ethnicity at times. Majority of if I'd learned more about your ethnicity, your culture, I would sit there and say, wow, I didn't know all that, because I probably didn't. And I would be cultural appropriation of sitting there saying, oh, I don't know, whatever culture is, I could pull up and say, oh, I love French fries, and get somebody pissed off. That's not what it is. See, that's that cultural appropriation. People think of a Lakota, and I think of a native person, it's all teepees, and I'm going to put on my regalia, my feathers, and bees. Many moons ago. But, that's not who we are. Yeah, we like to tell stories. But those stories belong to a Teospre. They belong to that person and to that people, to his people. Yeah. Because those stories are theirs. And that's not who we really actually are. Like I said, that's that cultural appropriation. And I could tell you that for certain because I did a couple of trainings. And a couple of trainings, I couldn't, the first training, I couldn't get no one to really listen. Wow. And I was trying my best, and no one would listen. And I was sitting there and say, oh, okay. I couldn't understand. So then I got up in the next training and I said, hey, many moons ago, this is the way that it happened. Everybody just turned. They all sat there and listened. You know what that tells me? That we were all people that listened to oral history. We're all people that listen to that. But that's the misinterpretation too of what we are. I had to catch an attention of people to say that. But in the end, it wasn't about that. People like hearing the stories of the past. But what about the stories of now? our stories exist, but no one likes to hear them. So those are the stories that we have to sit there and look at, and I mean, probably way off deal here, but in the end, it's just about all the stuff that we're tending not to, that we tend to forget as people, no matter what ethnicity you are. You look at like I said when I first started, I'm not against the Bible or any other type of religion. We all have the same religion. We just practice it in a different way.
True.
So to me, if people really thought about it, for us in my culture, is that when we leave this world, we just go to the next. We don't have heaven, hell, you're going there, you're going here. For us, you're just leaving this physical presence here. You're going to the next world to be at the other realm. And that's where we always hold on to. So, like I said, there's the differences in the religions and what we believe in, but in the end, we still pray to the same God, the same creator.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Oh, sorry.
If your job is related to your culture, to your roots, what exactly do you do?
Well, that's a history. I'll tell you what I was. I was a police officer. I was a law enforcement officer for quite a long time. I'm out of law enforcement now. Now I really don't do nothing but going back to my roots. So there's a lot of stuff that I've been through. A lot of stuff that a lot of these natives that my relatives have been through the same. And we decided to kind of go back. So that's, to me, in my job to me right now is just being a teacher, passing on the wisdom and the actual practitioners that I actually know I'm good at. Teach my son, teach whoever, to uphold certain values. That's about all I really do right now. Not saying that I don't want to work or anything. It's just, if you ever try doing this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work because not only are you working on your to teach, you're actually reteaching yourself and you're re-educating yourself to be a better person than what I once was or that we once were. But we're showing them a better way to and able to work through everything. So my job right now is just basically being a father, not a grandfather yet, but being everything I can be for the people, doing the best I can. So that's a job within itself.
It's the best one.
Oh yeah.
How do you want to see the future?
How do I want to see the future? Right now, I really can't see the future until I actually know more seeds are planted. But in the end, what I'd want to see in the future is just more of my people being more recognized as who we are, rather than cattle. So if you know anything about the Lakota history, when we were brought into the treaty and we were brought to anything else, we were taught that we were put underneath the Department of War. We were put underneath the Department of Interior. We're put underneath all these departments. And if you ever sit there and look at what they really are, is these departments that they got us guys underneath, the only thing they watch over is land and cattle. And we're the only ethnicity that actually has to have a card that states how much Indian we are. there's a lot that we face. There's a lot of stuff that we endure. But the most important part, it's easy to say that we're identified, but we may be identified around the world and known around the world, but we're not identified in our own land. So how is that for an identity crisis? So, if anything, I'd like to see more of our people more recognized and known and not labeled as what we are.
Yes, it's about
Let us
putting
guys
labels on people.
and letting us guys live free, living like how we used to. Not saying that it's a bad thing or a good thing, but the end is we should be able to still go to our own winter camps, our own spring camps, our own summer camps. No, we have to stay on a reservation that we consider a prisoner of war camp. That's what they are. They're not reservation. They're prisoner of war camps. We get to go off them, but the only way we get to keep any type of freedom is staying on.
Yeah. I have maybe last question. Did you go to boarding school or was it over?
No, I could. My dad was a law enforcement.
Okay.
He taught me a little bit of what some of the stuff what it meant to be in a Kichita. But he passed on. But during the times that I lived with him, when we were with him, when he was still in this world, we traveled a lot. So we went to many schools. Wasn't boarding schools or anything, but been to schools, enough schools to know how much racism exists in this world. But I'll tell you a story if you got time, if we have time for that. But I'll tell you a story of going to a school where, when you talk about cultural appropriation, I was only a teenager going through school. Went through the school. They were talking about the Battle of Little Bighorn. This guy gets up. He's the teacher, dressed up as a cowboy, whatever. I didn't think anything because didn't want to know too much more. I already knew that me and my people fought in the Battle of Little Bighorn. But the miscultural appropriation happened that day. And the teacher called me a savage. He said, the savages killed our people over there. They killed the people up in Battle of the Little Bighorn. And one of those savages exists in this room.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? And ain't that right, GrassRope? And rest is history. After that, I lost my mind and got kicked out of the class and was told to go to a principal's office. So, that's the miscultural appropriation that happens. And I don't know if the education system has changed nowadays from this day forward, but I'll sit there and say this much as knowing my oral history from my grandfather for the first GrassRope, who was actually there at Battle of Little Bighorn. And knowing that and having somebody tell me I'm a savage. So there's the identity crisis again. Who are we supposed to be? That's the identity crisis that all natives are facing. We don't have the right to be who we really are. We're told we have to be something else. So, with the future that exists and the future that is maybe looks more promising in the end would be to work on all these miscultural appropriations, especially towards any ethnicity that faces the same type of criticism, the same type of identity crisis, to actually know who they really are and let them be who they really are. grateful for the Western, what the societies and the innovation that this world has brought to the future whatsoever. But in the end, even those people probably forgot who they really are. In the end, you could learn all the stuff in this world, but it's all about going to the next, and you can't take none of that with you. So you could be a king, but you can't take all the stuff you have in the world with you. The only thing you can have, and the only thing you can take with you, is what you did good in this world to actually make sure that somebody else is still leaving that you left with them. And that's the things that we strive for. So if there's a better future out there that's going to come, that's what I'd hope to see, especially for my Native people, so that they could sit there and continue to know who they are as an identity, and knowing who their real origins are, and knowing how great of a people they really are. How advanced and civilized they were in the end, because a lot of the stuff that they had in those through that history back then kept everything in play. It kept it in check. You know that? It kept them in balance. And no matter what, which camp or wherever they were, they had balance, no matter how it was. Nowadays, we can't even have balance within one little community without somebody fighting. There was many things. I said there's a lot more to learn from oral history, and especially from for me, just deep dive into knowing who we really are.
Wow, great. It's a great plan.
Yeah, sorry if that was a little too much, but yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff we face.
Well, I think we have to fight ignorance and teach people.
Well, I think it's not really. It's ignorance and arrogance, but that even comes from even within any ethnicity. There's always one shooting for the stars. There's always one willing to leave everyone behind. There's always the one that's not willing to bring it and make sure the people are safe. But it happens. It's okay. It's all okay, because there's always someone there to still sit there and keep balance. And that's the way I look at it. And these next young men or whoever else is going to be looking at this or watching this, I'm hoping that they take something from this and maybe make some of the changes that we talk about. And I'm grateful to even sit in front of you guys to talk, because in the end, I'm only a Lakota that's trying to do the best for its people. That's it. And that just takes a little bit to be best myself, then I got to do that too. Always work on myself, and then working with the people. So that's where we're at. Yeah. I said I know people probably wanted to hear the many moons story, but in the end, the many moons is still existing here today. We're still here. We're still living the way that we want to, but it's a challenge, but we're doing it. Much love for everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
For your teaching.
Thank you. Welcome.